What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and we are doing our second round of player rankings for the 2018 NFL Draft. It's the 15th, so it's the last day for underclassmen to declare, which is a good starting point because now we know what players we're dealing with. Hopefully, I will pop up a graphic here, which is my rankings 1.0 that I did at week 5 of the college football season. And a lot have changed. A couple players, Will Greer, Jake Browning, have decided to go back to school. So we are doing our fresh rankings. I can't really see me doing a third version of these unless something drastically happens at the scouting combine. And the first time I recorded this, it was going on 25 minutes. I want to try to keep it as close to 10 as possible so it's digestible to you guys. So let's just jump right into it. Before we jump into the top 10, I have 3 honorable mentions. Number 1 is Daniel Jones, the quarterback from Duke. No one's sure if he declared or not. I tried my best to find it. I'm going to assume there's no smoke, there's no fire, and he's returning to Duke, but he is a project quarterback that I really am a big fan of. Number 2 is Nick Fitzgerald from Mississippi State. He had a bad injury, which is why he got left off my list. And number 1 is Mike White from Western Kentucky. I definitely think there's some upside there. I think he's a rosterable quarterback, should get drafted at some point, and really was a 10A, 10B scenario, but I decided let's stick my neck out on the line and go with a conclusive top 10, no 10As or anything like that. So without further ado, jumping into our top 10 quarterback rankings. At number 10, we have Chase Litton from Marshall. Now, I'm going to be, for all these picks, I'm doing a little bit different than my 1.0 rankings. I'm going to try to have some clips or something like that of my favorite plays of the season. So it's Chase Litton from Marshall, 6'6", 230 pounds on the season, 3,100 passing yards, 25 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. When you look at the pros, he has NFL size. He's built like Mike Glennon. That's a pretty good comp. He has good accuracy, short and medium, and he has a pretty good arm, obviously, with that size. The negatives are his deep ball accuracy is very inconsistent. There is a lot of overthrows to his game, but for a guy like Chase Litton, he should be a guy that, is definitely viewed as a project type quarterback and should be rostered for teams that maybe have older quarterbacks that kind of want to, throw some mud, see if it sticks to the wall, and you might be able to get something that can develop long term. And with that size at 6'6", 230, sign me up. On quarterback number 9, it's Ben Kurt from Virginia. Great name. 6'4", 215 pounds on the season, 3,200 passing yards, 25 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. The pros is he has great medium to deep ball accuracy, which is something that you don't see a lot in college quarterbacks. It seems like, for the most part, unless you're truly one of the elite prospects, your deep throw accuracy does struggle from times where it's very inconsistent. I think he is consistent there, and he's good. He's good decision making, which is pros. These are things that are really hard to teach and fine-tune once you get to the NFL. The negatives is he really does have an average arm, and he's kind of a project quarterback. And so for some of these guys, I'm going to label project quarterback tab as a negative because it's all dependent on what team you go to. If you go to a team like the Browns that has no history whatsoever of developing quarterbacks, these guys, it's going to be used as a negative because they're not going to get the growth there. Versus if they go to a team that can just develop quarterbacks left, right, and center, maybe look at how Philadelphia really, evolved Carson Wentz, or what McVay did in the St. Louis with LA with Jared Goff. Like, that's a better scenario. So because it's so predetermined, you're gonna see project come up as a negative for some of these quarterbacks. At Ben Kirk, sign me up, man. Looks real solid. Going to quarterback number 8, we have Luke Falk from Washington State, 6'4", 220 pounds on the season, 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions in that insano Mike Leach offense. When you look at Luke Falk, originally in my rankings, my first ones, I had him at number 6. He falls down to number 8 because the more and more you look at it, he's just average. Average is good enough to hold a backup gig in the NFL, but when I had him at number 6, a fringe top 5 quarterback, those are kind of guys that you hope at some point might be able to get a starting gig and take off with it. When you look at Luke Falk, the positives, very accurate, and he has a whole lot of experience, but the negatives, average arm, below average athlete. I just feel like there's a low ceiling with them. Maybe from that standpoint, it's a double-edged sword. There's a low floor. But anytime there's a low ceiling with a type player, that's clearly not going to be like a day one starter or anything like that. You kind of need to tone your expectations. So that's why we have him here at number 8. Going to number 7, we have Riley Ferguson from Memphis, 6'4", 210 pounds, 4,200 passing yards on the season, 36 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. I'm a big fan of him. I think, Riley Ferguson and all the other quarterbacks we talked about are probably going to be day 3 quarterbacks, and that's where I like to get my projects. And if I, for whatever reason, say if the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl and Nick Foles can get trade baited somewhere else, Riley Ferguson would be a guy that I would love to bring in the mid rounds and see what he can do and how he can develop behind Carson Wentz. When you look at the positives of Riley Ferguson, big arm, good athlete, and he's clutch. His game against UCLA, which hopefully is the gameplay that you're seeing right now, was simply outstanding, man. I'm incredibly impressed, almost blown blown away with his performance in that game. I mean, obviously the UCLA defense did not show up whatsoever, but he still had to make the throws. But we look at the negatives, again, project-type quarterback, so it's really dependent on where he goes, and his vision. He really does like to lock onto one wide receiver, and when you have a guy that's as talented as Anthony Miller, who's definitely rising up, could be a surprise first-round pick, probably will go in the second round. It's very easy just to lock on him. He's going to get open more often than not. But that is a bad habit to carry into the NFL, and that is a habit I think he is going to have to break. But ultimately, I'm a big fan of Riley Ferguson, and that's why he is my number 7 quarterback. Going to quarterback number 6, we have Mason Rudolph from Oklahoma State, 6'5", 230 pounds on the season, 4,900 passing yards, 37 touchdowns to 9 interceptions of a air raid-ish Oklahoma State offense led by Mike Gundy. When you look at the pros of Mason Rudolph, he has excellent mechanics. I think he is my favorite throwing motion out of all the quarterbacks in this year's draft class. And as a Gator fan, as Tebow being my favorite college player of all time, I know a thing or two about just horrific throwing motions. And Mason Rudolph it's so fluid, man. Excellent mechanics. He's a big arm, a good athlete. But when you look at it, you got to look at the scheme he comes from. I mean, maybe they'll be viewed the same way as Patty Mahomes was. And even though he comes from an air raid, a team's going to gamble on him. Because Mason Rudolph is a guy that could be a surprise first-round pick. I think he'll go between rounds 2 and 3. But he's inconsistent, and his accuracy and decision-making sometimes just make you wonder, like, what was he thinking? And those lapses in judgments can be detrimental to a quarterback. I bring up Taj Boyd from Clemson. Seems like he had everything going for him. But he had absolutely horrific decision-making, which means I think he ended up playing for the Jets on the practice squad or something like that and couldn't make it in the big show. I see some of those things in Mason Rudolph, but I think the upside is definitely going to make him a highly draftable quarterback, and he's one of my favorite quarterbacks in this year's draft class. I originally had him at number 3 in my original rankings, but I think the more and more I look at it, I'm trying just to view these quarterbacks. If I think that there's a legitimate chance they could be nothing more than a backup, I kind of need to downgrade that versus the quarterbacks I think have a much higher ceiling, which is why I have Mason Rudolph here. But I'm still a really, really big fan. I can definitely see him being well and being a legitimate NFL quarterback. Going number 5, it is going to be Josh Allen from Wyoming, 6'5", 235 pounds on the season, 1,800 passing yards, 16 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. The positive, he has a good arm, good athlete. And by good arm, almost borderline huge arm. And he's a mini Carson Wentz. If you look at Carson Wentz's tape from North Dakota State, and you look at what Josh Allen did at Wyoming, you'd go, like, this is like they're brothers or something like that. They look like almost clones of each other. Obviously, Carson Wentz, a little bit more refined, a little bit better at everything. But if Carson Wentz is looking like the next MVP, next, top 5 quarterback in the NFL for the future, the fact that you kind of look close to that with Josh Allen makes him highly draftable. The negatives with Josh Allen, he's inconsistent, which is kind of a knock against Carson Wentz, and he's a project-type player. He is very much dependent on what team he gets drafted to. Like, again, and a lot of people are saying, oh, maybe go to the Browns. He could be the surprise Browns pick, or goes to the Jets, something like that. He's not going to get the development. He's not going to get the coaching there that he really does need, and he should never be a day 1 starter. I mean, that's why I think separates him from Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz could be a day 1 starter. A lot of people thought he shouldn't be, but when they traded Sam Bradford, he took off running, and we haven't looked back since. I don't think you're going to get that kind of quality from Josh Allen in year 1, which is why I have him at number 5. And again, because he's either going to be so good or so average, I had to put him at number 5 because obviously he could be the second coming of Carson Wentz or a mini Wentz, or he could be a guy that can never develop past, kind of like a Christian Hackenberg, never develop past that, backup quarterback with maybe some upside kind of role. So that's why we have Josh Allen at number 5. At number 4, we're going with the most polarizing quarterback in this year's draft class by many, Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma, 6'1", 220 pounds on the season. 4,600 yards, 43 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, also had 5 rushing touchdowns. He was your Heisman Trophy winner. Baker Mayfield, the positives is he is a good athlete. In my opinion, he's the second best accuracy overall in this year's draft class, and he has the intangibles. He's a winner, he's a leader, and those are things that you see some of the quarterbacks, maybe like a Marcus Mariota comes off the top of my mind in the NFL, that they lack that, and I really don't buy into the whole lead by example. I think there needs to be a mix of a guy that leads on the field and a guy that can take control of a locker room. And Baker Mayfield has that in spades. The negatives, ultimately, he has an arm that can make all the NFL throws, but he doesn't have a big enough arm that can compensate for a lack of accuracy and a lack of mechanics, which some of these guys do, and that's always a positive while you're learning the position. His pocket presence can be a little bit weak, kind of like Riley Ferguson. He could just look down one wide receiver. And you have the old off-field thing. He got arrested. You had that on-field, off-field thing against Kansas where he did some gestures and stuff on the sideline. Personally, I love that. That shows fire. That shows competitiveness. But I understand that there's a lot of PC people in the NFL who go, oh, that's not the way I play football. I want a Johnny Unitas. I want a guy that wears a suit and then friggin' takes your daughter to the dance and brings her home by 10 p.m. Something like that. Ultimately, man, I am a big fan of Baker Mayfield because of the size thing, which is, yeah, I didn't use it as a negative here because I really do think the people that just give a big pro to NFL size does not make the quarterback. We saw with Drew Brees, seeing Deshaun Watson, constantly see it. It does help, but it's not something that can completely write off a quarterback, so I'm not going to hold that against him. But ultimately, the average arm, the pocket presence, and the off-field, those are things that could, does he look like a guy that can repeat offend off the field? Honestly, I can't say no. So that is definitely something that could go against him. But I do think Baker Mayfield will be a first-round quarterback where some experts have him as a clear second-rounder. I don't think he's a first-round quarterback, and I'm a big fan of him. I'm pulling for him, and hopefully we get to see him on Sundays sooner than later. But he's scheme-dependent too. If he goes to a team that doesn't have a lot of playmakers, it might be tough. You can go to a team, maybe sit behind Drew Brees, maybe go to Denver, Howard has weapons there. That'd be a great fit, and I would like to see that. Going to quarterback number 3, I have Sam Darnold from USC, 6'4", 220 pounds on the season, 4,100 passing yards, 26 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. Now, I know a lot of people say Baker Mayfield's the most polarizing quarterback. For me, it comes down to Sam Darnold because literally on any given drive, you don't know what Sam Darnold you're going to get. The pros for him is I do think he possesses the most upside, the highest ceiling out of any quarterback of this year's draft class. He's a cannon of an arm, and he can be lethally accurate. The negatives is he's inconsistent and turnover prone. That's the only way I can really surmise it. Watching USC play, one time Sam Darnold could lead his team against the best defense in the college, go 7 for 7, have perfect on-dime throws, get a touchdown. And then the next drive, or next week, he can go up against an FCS team. He will just throw a mind-boggling bad interception, just a toss-up that should never have been thrown. And because of that, I think he's a project-type quarterback. He definitely shouldn't be a guy that should be rushed to start it. And when you see people having going number 1 or number 2 in the mock draft, there's only one quarterback I do think, maybe outside Baker Mayfield, that can start day one, and you can have confidence starting them day one. But I think because there's such a huge gap in consistent play from Sam Darnold, I just have to put him at number 2 because I think the guy that I have at, or number 3, sorry, because I think the guy I have at number 2 can compensate for some of his deficiencies. Whereas Sam Darnold, he's the kind of guy like I just can see him throwing four picks, keep doing the same thing because that's all he has in his tool shed. He's going to be really good at it someday, but probably not day one. And when you're investing a big pick in a quarterback nowadays, it seems like almost 80% of the time, they're going to rush to start that quarterback sooner than later. So with Sam Darnold, I don't know, maybe if he can go to New York, sit behind Eli Manning, that would be a great fit for him. But I really do think because if he goes to the complete wrong scenario, he could be ruined as a quarterback. That's why I got to put him at number 3. But it is really close. I keep saying number 2 by mistake because it really almost is a 2A, 2B, but I wanted to make it a definitive list. Going to quarterback number 2, I have Lamar Jackson from Louisville, 6'3", 210 pounds. On the season, he had 5,200 total yards passing and running, 27 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, plus 18 rushing touchdowns. Now, the reason why I have Sam Darnold behind Lamar Jackson is because while I think Lamar Jackson has equally as high of a ceiling, maybe a little bit higher chance of being a bust than Sam Darnold, it's that he can make scramble plays with his feet when plays break down, and that can kind of compensate for his lack of maybe pocket presence and lack of accuracy in some aspects, versus where Sam Darnold just doesn't have those traits to get out of those situations and say they're both thrown to the fire and have to play as rookies. The positives for Lamar Jackson, he's the best athlete by a mile at the quarterback spot. Huge arm, he's going to be absolute money in the right scheme, and his pocket presence is incredibly underrated. When you see a mobile quarterback like Lamar Jackson, even last year, when he won the Heisman, he was one of those guys. As soon as a play broke down, he was looking to just take it off and run with it because he was the best athlete on the field. But you saw a lot this year during his junior campaign. He was staying in the pocket. When a play broke down, he was almost too against what you want to see, where maybe he forced a bad throw. He was staying in the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield, trying to make a play with his arm, which is why I kind of felt it might have been better for him to go back to school one more year and continue to develop those pocket mechanics. But ultimately, with the success of Deshaun Watson with the Houston Texans, we can see that these mobile quarterbacks that are elite athletes with great arms and upside, if they go to the right scheme with the right quarterback coach, I mean, Bill O'Brien did a terrific job with Deshaun Watson. If somehow, some way, Lamar Jackson can get that kind of treatment, he's going to be an absolute stud. I'm a massive fan of Lamar Jackson. The negatives for him, obviously he does struggle with accuracy issues, and he needs to, the project tech, he needs to go to the right scheme or else it might be failure launch from day one. But ultimately, I'm incredibly excited to see Lamar Jackson in the NFL. And pretty much if anyone ever says Lamar Jackson can't be an NFL quarterback, he's a running back, he's a DB, he's a wide receiver, just throw their opinion out the window. This guy here possesses all the tangibles to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Just give him the right QB mind to do it. Then finishing up with QB1, we have Josh Rosen from UCLA, 6'4", 220 pounds on the season, 3,700 passing yards, 26 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Pros, he's QB1 all day. He's the best pocket passer in the draft, has the best accuracy. He's clutch. You saw that against Texas A&M. That is one of the best college football games I've ever watched. And he's the most pro-ready. He is the only quarterback I really feel in this draft class outside of Lamar Jackson in the right scheme or Baker Mayfield in the right scheme that could start day one, which is a big thing that you want. And really the only negative against Josh Rosen is the intangibles, like rumors spread by Trent Dilfer from the Elite 11 camp that he's a hassle out the field and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, you might get some of those things, but if you're a talented quarterback, when you make that jump from college to the pros, it's a different environment. You're now a professional. This is now your career. You don't have to worry about studying. You don't have to worry about all that other stuff. I think it's really going to fizzle, and you're just going to see the arm talent and go, all right, he's not Bo Callahan from the movie Draft Day. He has all the tools to be a very talented NFL quarterback. And for me, if I'm the Cleveland Browns and you do not want to pass up an opportunity, Josh Rosen has to be the guy. He's the most pro-ready. He's the guy that can get you the most wins. He's a guy that hopefully if you pair him maybe with a Saquon Barkley with the Browns' second pick, I mean, we're not going to try to make this into a mock draft video. He's just so much better. Put it this way, Josh Rosen is just so much better than Deshaun Kaiser right now. Hasn't even been in the NFL or had a QB mind in the NFL. Try to build him up a little bit. And he's almost, Hugh Jackson proof. If you're trying to go on the assumption that Cleveland can't possibly develop quarterbacks, Josh Rosen doesn't need a whole lot of development. Certainly, there is room to grow. Certainly, still has more to go for his ceiling to be reached. But, there's not a whole lot that you can destruct. There's not a whole lot that Hugh Jackson can mess up and bobble with the pick of Josh Rosen, which is why, for me, when you're the safest quarterback and you have elite arm talent, you're always going to be number one all day. So, honestly, even though I love Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, I'm a big fan, Josh Rosen is head and shoulders the number one quarterback for me in this year's draft class. I'll stick my neck out on the line with that hot take. So there you go, guys. Those are my top 10 quarterbacks for this year's draft class. Let me know in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with any of my rankings. Maybe I missed a player that you want me to check out. I will do that. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Plenty of draft content coming. This is Draft Central. This is the best spot on YouTube to tune in for draft content. And until next time, it's C4 saying smash the like if you enjoyed. And until next time, peace out.